In the fading autumn of 1994, the town of Ravenwood lay tucked away behind shrouds of mist and memory. Surrounded by ancient forests and forgotten roads, it had once been a bustling mining village. But when the mines dried up, so did its fortune. Now, it stood as a skeleton of its past, half forgotten, half feared. And yet, to Emily Carter, it seemed like the perfect escape. Emily, a 27-year-old writer haunted by personal loss, had inherited her grandmother's manor on the edge of Ravenwood. She saw it not only as a retreat from the world, but also a place to finish the novel she had failed to complete for years. What she didn't know was that Ravenwood had been waiting for her. The road that led to the manor was narrow, winding, and lined with trees that seemed to lean in just a little too close. Emily's car hummed softly, headlights slicing through the mist. As she pulled up the gravel driveway, Ravenwood Manor emerged from the fog like a relic from a forgotten age, its stone walls worn and ivy-covered, the windows dark and reflective. Inside, the house still carried the scent of lavender and old books. Furniture covered in white sheets stood like ghosts in the dim light. Emily walked room to room, brushing dust off banisters and smiling faintly at childhood memories. Her grandmother had been a stern but loving woman, known around town as a healer and, whispered by some, as a witch. The first night passed quietly, save for the occasional creaks and groans of the old house settling. But on the second night, the whispers began. It started with a sound, barely audible, a hushed voice that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Emily sat up in bed, heart pounding. "Hello," she called out into the darkness, but only silence replied. She assumed it was her imagination. Old houses had ways of playing tricks on tired minds. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew clearer each night. Not words, exactly, more like fragments, broken syllables carried on the wind. And they always came from the same place, the cellar door at the end of the west hallway. Emily had always been afraid of basements. This one was no different, dark, cold, and full of things that didn't want to be seen. One afternoon, curiosity overpowered fear, and she descended the creaking steps into the gloom. The air grew heavy with dampness and earth. Rows of shelves lined the walls, holding jars of strange herbs, dried roots, and books with leather bindings so old their titles had worn away. At the far end, she found a trunk. Inside were journals, her grandmother's. The entries started mundane but gradually descended into cryptic symbols, references to rituals, and warnings about something buried beneath the roots of Ravenwood. That night, she dreamed of a child crying in the forest, her voice echoing, "Find me." Emily awoke with her breath caught in her throat. The dream had felt too real. The child's cries, the cold hand pulling her into the trees, the sensation of soil beneath her fingernails. She glanced around the room, dim morning light casting pale shadows through the curtains. The journal pages from the cellar still lay scattered on her desk. The last entry read, "It stirs again. I thought sealing the forest altar would be enough. But the child calls to her. Blood to blood. The last of us must never open the root door." Emily couldn't shake the feeling that her arrival had triggered something. That night, she followed the whispers again. They were louder now, almost chanting, pulling her toward the forest behind the house. She wrapped herself in a coat, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped into the mist-shrouded woods. Trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches twisted like reaching hands. Every step forward seemed to silence the crickets, thick in the air. She walked for what felt like an hour before she found it, an ancient stone circle covered in moss and carved with runes. At its center, a rotting wooden door embedded into the forest floor, the root door. Emily's flashlight flickered. The whispers crescendoed. Something behind that door wanted to be found. The forgotten history of Ravenwood. Back at the manor, Emily researched everything she could find. A dusty box in the attic held answers. Newspaper clippings, town records, and a torn diary from 1872 told the true history of Ravenwood. 150 years ago, the town had been plagued by disappearances, mostly children. The townsfolk believed a spirit lived beneath the forest, feeding on grief and loneliness. Desperate, they turned to a seer named Elspeth Carter, Emily's great-great-grandmother, who performed a binding ritual, trapping the spirit beneath the root door. The cost: her daughter was taken and never seen again. Generations of Carter women had lived by the forest, acting as guardians of the seal. And now Emily was the last. The return. The next evening, the sky darkened early. Thunder rolled over Ravenwood as Emily returned to the forest with her grandmother's journal, a vial of herbs, and a flickering lantern. Rain pattered through the trees like whispers. The door was waiting. She stepped into the circle, spoke the incantation written in the margins of the journal. By blood and bone, I seal the moan. By flame and ash, return to stone. But it was too late. The ground shook. The root door burst open with a scream of wind and light. A figure crawled out, half human, half shadow. Its face was shifting, a blur of agony and stolen memories. Emily stood frozen until a voice behind her said, "Run." It was the girl from her dreams. Pale, translucent, eyes full of sorrow. "She's feeding," the ghost whispered. "She wants you too." Emily dropped the herbs into the wind. Flames erupted from the soil, encircling the stone ring. The spirit shrieked, clawing at the sky. The child held Emily's hand tightly, chanting the spell again, louder this time. By blood and bone, I seal the moan. The forest trembled. Roots sprang from the earth, dragging the spirit back down. With a final screech, it was gone. The door slammed shut, sealed once more. 1 year later, Emily stayed in Ravenwood. The whispers had ceased, but she often walked to the stone circle, leaving flowers for the child who helped her. She published her novel, Whispers Beneath Ravenwood, a bestseller that many believed was pure fiction. But she knew better. The forest remembers. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, you can still hear her whisper. Find me,